Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. Fall has fallen.
That's kind of boring. May I throw that back in your face? Although fall is the start of every new theatrical season.
Yeah.
And that's only because the Tonys take place in the spring. I don't get it. It's an arbitrary date.
Well, also, we've lost a lot of people over the past couple of weeks. I was going to use the working title, All Things We Ever Did Are Left Behind.
Oh.
It's just a long one.
Yeah,
a long subtitle.
Let's let both of those go away.
The point is, we will never find a working title. They're just fun prompts.
I am hoping someday we will.
This is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. Mitch, it's been a busy summer. I think our last post was post-Tony's post. Yeah. And then the summer hit us in the face.
Yep, and as expected, and it is just part of the circle of life. Most of last year's shows are closed. And we have some stragglers that are trying to hang on there, which is good. But we have a brand new slate of shows due to come in, filling the holes that are left in the 41 Broadway theaters and the, I don't know how many off-Broadway theaters. So we're looking forward to those. It's just we always know that July 4th, we lose half of the new shows that make it to the Tony Awards. And by Labor Day, we lose another third of them. And it's the circle of life. Thank you, Elton John. Yeah. Maybe that's what we should have as a subtitle. The circle of life.
Ah, that's a good working title.
Yeah.
Changing it. Making it a mission. The circle of life. It's a good working title that we can't use.
Right. There you go.
Yes.
And actually, I know we haven't discussed this, but I am going to bring it up, even though it's not even on our list of discussion. I read a fascinating article. The Supreme Court ruled on the ownership of artistic visions, artistic paintings, artistic works. It's not just work. It's centered around Andy Warhol and the idea that he took, for example, Prince, he took Marilyn Monroe, right? And he created this new art based on somebody else's photographs of them. And the Supreme Court just ruled that's illegal.
It's artistic rights?
Yeah.
It was
that the actual photographer has rights. Right. And it's a long, detailed story that maybe we can add to something else. But the implications for what do you do when you take Stephen Sondheim, now that he's gone, or Richard Rodgers, and you create a new directorial interpretation of it, and let's say you cut a song, or you change a little dialogue, or whatever you do to it, the implications from this are far-reaching. Perhaps maybe not, it's not the same thing as an interpretation, but the fact that an Andy Warhol of Prince is worth infinitely more than the photograph that it's derived from.
Yeah.
Right? And then you just say, well, what if, and this has happened, what if a magazine puts the Andy Warhol on its cover? Well, right? And that's where the whole lawsuit came out of. So I don't want to talk in detail, but I just think it's an exciting dilemma that we are now stuck with. And this is brand new information.
Well, it's interesting because, sorry, I'm fixing a foot problem. It's interesting because NFTs, I haven't heard too much about them recently, but that was like a big thing. And also, everything has AI in it. And so AI is pulling from things that already exist to kind of try to make something new. But, it's becoming problematic.
Well, and again, sorry, it's just coming out of the blue. We weren't planning to talk this. Again, AI in the musicians and the composers, the musicians union, they are fighting because it's not that AI can't interpret, but what they're doing is they're throwing all pre-existing music into the data banks that AI will use, and no one's given them permission. Even though the music already exists, and therefore in our own brains, and they acknowledge a composer will take stuff that he's heard his entire life and reinterpret it and come up with new music. So, but AI isn't a new composer, or is it? So if they can use this stuff as the basis for something new, and you're now, what's the word? They say an artist steals, a mimic, just borrows, an artist steals.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is AI an artist? And wow, are these fascinating topics? If we end up using holograms of Broadway performers, what does that mean? Is someone owed money? Do you have to get their permission? I mean, these are things that SAG-AFTRA were fighting for. Now you do.
Yeah, I do. So this came up recently that before James Earl Jones died, he gave Disney permission to basically create his likeness in AI.
I have no doubt.
Not his likeness, to replicate his voice,
especially for Star Wars, since they own. Yeah. I have no doubt that's true. Disney, because I know, having worked there, the kinds of contracts that Disney makes everyone sign.
Yeah,
they basically
life away.
Yeah, well, it's like, the same thing happens in corporations where you create an Excel program, and because you did it at work, the corporation owns your work. When I was at Disney, I created new budgets that they were using for a number of new Excel budgets. It wasn't the actual numbers. It was the formatting of the numbers. And Disney made sure they knew that they owned it, not me. And I'm going, fine. It's like, go ahead. Yeah. You don't know how to use it. I know how to use it. You go ahead.
Shut up. God.
Yeah. But they were very clear. So I have no doubt. And he may have gotten some extra money for it. They're also not ungenerous about that. That they may say, we want this. How much more is it going to cost? So, which leads us to, or back to, because you had mentioned it.
Does it really lead us?
No, it doesn't. I'm pushing the issue. We lost.
Let's remember that the end of June was our last episode. So,
and we apologize. We're not going to do this again, right, Darnell?
I don't know. We take summers off, so it happens. If anybody wants to fund us through the summer, I think that would be great.
That'd be great.
So, well, we took off for good reason. We're entitled to breaks, and we, so in July, we started planning another series of readings from the farm, wegrowtheater.com. The farm brought some shows, some plays down to Philadelphia again, and in this summer series that we've been doing consistently since 2023. And this year, we decided to do two of those, two readings, one musical and one play. What could go wrong? Not that anything went wrong.
It did actually.
Yeah, in a week we mounted two shows. But we learned a lot of interesting things. Not things we didn't know already, but just things that just shine a light on the needs of our community, for example. So in July, our readings were in August. So we put a call out. It was hard to find people in the summer in Philadelphia because, fortunately for artists, there are quite a few festivals in the summer that provide working opportunities for them. So that's great. But it almost made it a challenge for us to find people. It's like tricky. We weren't sure, the seasons have been fulfilled, and we just think that there'd be more space to allow for a reading series because the fully mounted productions have, ended with the regional theaters seasons. But it was an interesting experience to really cutting down to the wire to find, the last people. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just made me realize there's a lot of festivals. And I started thinking about, I've never been to a summer stock. I've never been part of one. And I don't even know if there's, I assume there are still some, what do we categorize?
We're not sure. There's and the fascinating topic, because I literally just had the discussion with some of the top people at Equity. Summer stock used to be the life and breath for young actors. You go all over the country, you get to play parts that, similar to college, you might not normally get in the real world. Right? You can be 26 years old and you can get away with playing 42. Right? It's like, and you get to do a lot of tap dancing, but you may not get paid very much, or you probably have to help put the lights up while you're doing it. So you get a lot of experience. You also meet a lot of people who may give you jobs in the future. That summer stock world has almost disappeared. It's very interesting. And so the question is, what do these young actors do? Now, it's not completely gone. There are summer theaters, but even the summer theaters that I used to work on now are using stars. They're using New York actors playing the correct age that they want. And very few of them are doing new works at all. So it's fascinating to me. But that said, I know I got my start in the summer stock on Martha's Vineyard. I was still in college, and they let me be musical director for an entire summer of none of them were new works, but they were very difficult. We did, I think, 4 musicals and 4 plays. Every week it was something different, which means you're rehearsing during the day, performing at night. Then the play you were rehearsing becomes the play at night. And literally, I was living on a cot with no air conditioning in a hellhole that entire time, but you were working day and night. But along the way, I got to be the assistant director for now, who is John Lithgow. He was also a kid, but he was directing Glass Menagerie. and I was his assistant. So he and I have remained friendly from there. He had never worked on the New York stage at that point. You meet people. There were tons of people. I also found out I was a pretty good musical director, since these shows, I had a week to rehearse everybody, and they came across impeccably. So that was great to know. But then I was exhausted and had to go back to school. And I don't even remember if I made money. That's it's beyond me, you know?
And now, like, yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. You're talking about the readings that we did in Philly. Thank God they get something, but it is hard to say in the middle of the summer, unless you're totally unemployed, how do you find 1 week to give people and make a small amount of money? You know, but God bless them. The actors you found give you 150%. Nobody doesn't want to be there if they're there. They just give you their hearts, which is why our industry is so special. You know, you can get a job working at Campbell's Soup. I don't know how many people give 150%, you know, during the day when they're there. You know, they can do their job well, and then they go home, and that's what matters. In the theater, you go home and you work on lines, or you work on your song.
I would love for somebody who works at Campbell's Soup.
Oh, would you?
Who listens to the podcast to be like, hey, they mentioned us.
Yeah, let's see if we hear from anybody, shall we?
I could smell soup from my house.
Now,
Campbell's is right over.
Well, this does lead us to this kind of dedication. There are people in our industry who aren't famous, but they are famous to the other people in the industry. You know, I'm always aware, because I Zoom with my extended family every month. None of them know anybody I work with. I don't care how many times I tell them their names. It doesn't matter to them. They're more concerned with their grandchildren's going to kindergarten, right? Or where Santa Claus is going to be for Christmas. So they don't remember these names. And yet, as happens, you know, this is, again, circle of life, our theme for the night. This week has been particularly hard. We lost a lot of young or almost young performers who are famous within the industry, but they're not famous to the outside world. They have worked on the stage. They've had lead roles, all of them. And that some of them have won Tony Awards. All of them have been nominated for Tony Awards. And yet nobody outside of us knows who they are. It's, you know, and we're all devastated. And I mean devastated. It besides making you aware of your own mortality, that when they happen one after the other, you just go, you just want to say, God bless them, right? The talent, the joy they gave us with their performances. You know, somebody you can remember what he or she did on stage. And, you know, it's hard to lose anybody. But this week was particularly hard. I mean, I don't know if we want to name them because it kind of dates our podcast, but go ahead, Darnell. They're worth it.
I think it's fine. We, you know, because it's October. We're here in October now. And, you know, as we were gearing up of the year 2024.
Let's because we don't know when someone's listening to this.
It's all dated in the podcast.
Yeah,
now.
Okay.
But yes. You know, as we were preparing to return, because we knew the work we were doing over the summer was going to be consuming. We also knew that we wanted to try to get out of town for a little bit and everything. We actually worked like dogs this summer.
Absolutely.
We just didn't have time to contribute to the podcast, and so we know we are always going to come back. We'll be full swing, but yeah, as we were planning to come back, we had already had news about Adrian Bailey. I think Adrian Bailey was earlier on, and then we heard about Ken Page. Ken Page was notable for Cats, The Wiz, and The Night Before Christmas. Died at 70. And Gavin Creel, 48 years old, died recently.
Tony winner for Hello, Dolly. He was Into the Woods. He was one of the princes.
Millie.
That was his first.
She Loves Me.
We knew him all the time, but Adrian Bailey was 67. But Adrian Bailey lost his ability to participate in theater with Disney's The Little Mermaid. He was a phenomenal voice, a phenomenal dancer, and in the middle of early performances of Little Mermaid, someone or something, I don't know details, left a trap door open on stage, and he fell through it during a performance.
Wow.
His spine, he couldn't walk. He was barely using a cane in his later years. His theatrical life was totally destroyed. Luckily, he had a lot of people around him who loved him. But before that, he was leading performances in, and now I'm going to forget, he's the original voice of, on Broadway in, what is a musical? Someone's going to kill me. But there were quite a number of shows, so I'm going to apologize. I'm going to look it up.
We'll add it to the show notes.
Yeah, we'll add it to the show notes. But what a sweetheart. I'm looking up. Let's see. Here's his career. Sophisticated Ladies, Jelly's Last Jam, Smokey Joe's Cafe. That's the one I was thinking of. He had solos in that just, I mean, no one can, if you saw him, you couldn't forget him.
Wow.
And this man would have been a major, major performer had he been able to. So
I always find it, I find it interesting. So one of the things that Broadway does to celebrate those they've lost is they will dim the lights on the marquees.
They usually hold that for stars, because otherwise,
for starters.
But
yeah, otherwise the lights would be dim all the time. But the thing is, they don't happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They're scheduled, and so we lost James Earl Jones. We lost him a while ago. Not a while ago.
Over the summer, right?
Yeah, we lost. Yeah. So now they're going to dim the lights for him soon, and it's just interesting. That's a heartfelt thing to do. I don't know if anyone listening has ever seen the lights dim, or gone out there when the lights dim. Must be a beautiful moment.
But to be clear, the lights are dim. The marquee lights are dim.
Marquee lights, yeah.
Just before the shows on Broadway begin. What's tricky about this now, which is a new problem, is we used to have uniform starting times for all Broadway shows, which was 8 o'clock. A few decades before that, there was a uniform 7 o'clock. Now, individual shows choose between 7, 7:30, and 8 o'clock, and often the same show will have a different starting time every night of the week. So Tuesday and Wednesday may be 7, Thursday and Friday could be 7:30, Saturday can be 2 and 8. I mean, it's very confusing. You have to really watch your ticket information. So that creates a problem with dimming lights.
Yeah.
Right? New problem. First world problems, but it's a new problem.
I should make a correction that they dimmed the lights for James Earl Jones on the 26th and of September, and at that time they did it at 6:45.
Okay.
For 1 minute. Yeah. But I think that's a sweet thing. The thing about, I'm sure that every community has these moments, these things that really pull the community together. I don't know if anybody does it like the theater community does. I feel like we lead with passion. We lead irresponsibly.
No.
Like we're not always realistic, but we're full heart though. Is what I mean. It's like sometimes what motivates us is passion. It's drive, it's integrity, it's heart, and it's not money, even though we need money to do what we do. We are optimistic because we're thinking beyond that. We'll make it happen.
And to that point, I have to say, there are theater owners who get a bad rap, possibly for good reason, because they're mostly about money. They're leasing their theaters out. Well, memorials for actors, including non-famous actors, they tend to give up their theaters for free. So, I've had people in control of off-Broadway theaters. For someone who was a theater person but not famous, and I'd say, look, we're somewhat friends. We've worked together. Any chance we can rent your theater dirt cheap? And they'll say, it's all right, you can have it. Just pick a time that doesn't interfere with the show.
Yeah.
And this is out of the goodness of their heart, because people have to get paid at their theater. Mm-hmm. Every now and then they might say, hey, you have to pay a couple of hours for the house manager to be there. But that's a big difference for the thousands it would cost otherwise. And so we have these memorials for the celebrities. If you get a Hal Prince or a Steve Sondheim, you're getting the best Broadway show possible. They have video and sound and stars singing and everyone's dancing up the aisles. I mean, these are some of the best shows you'd ever want to see. But then there are the small ones, which are just heartfelt, people talking about their memories. I imagine the three we just discussed are going to get a combination where there'll be some amazing performances whenever they have their memorials. Yeah. And there'll be some just heartfelt stories. They're pretty mad. We also lost some stars. As I said, James Earl Jones, Maggie Smith.
Dame Maggie Smith.
Dame Maggie Smith, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
But again, she's mostly known for TV and film, but we've had her on the New York stage, the London stage, for most of her life. So pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a joy. And then you add to it, you're talking about the heart. We just had our annual Broadway Flea Market, which is always the last Sunday in September, just if everyone wants to put it in their calendars. And they shut down the two biggest streets of Broadway theaters, West 44th and West 45th Street. The unions and every show that wants to sets up a table and sells their leftover opening night gifts, things that were in their closet from shows that they did decades ago that they don't need the clutter for, or they just want to donate. All their extra programs, the press offices, whenever they have excess materials and merchandise from shows that have closed, they've got to clean out their offices. They donate it. And then the fans come out and they buy all this crap. I mean, I'm sorry. Some of it's amazing, but some of it's crap. You can buy T-shirts, you can buy playbills, CDs, opening night gifts. There you go. Darnell's wearing 50 years of Broadway at the Kennedy Center.
Yes, but I did see that. That event. I mean, I attended that.
Yeah,
event.
I know.
It was wonderful.
So
I was glad to shirt.
It's one of the joys of my year. I work 11 hours straight at the APAM table, one of the union tables, with people who are just giving their time. 100% of the money at that flea market goes to charity. Nothing goes to administration. And and they make over, it's an impossible number. This year, $1,421,000 at a flea market.
675.
What?
1,421,675.
That's take every penny.
Yes. Yes. But so tell them how much the APAM table.
Yeah,
paid.
I'm very proud. My union, APAM, Association of Theatrical Press Agents and Managers. That's APAM. Our table took in $95,000 at our table alone.
And last year it was what, 77?
77, and that was a record for a single table.
Yeah.
So we're very proud. And look, when I call it crap, I mean it's stuff we're getting out of our closet, but everything is brand new. It's stuff that we just went, I don't need 3 opening night gifts as the manager. The rest are given out. I'll keep mine and donate the other 2. And some fan from Indiana comes up, and they come out of the matinee and they look at it and say, oh my God, that is signed by Meryl Streep, or that is signed by Stephen Sondheim. I've got to have that. And then they, for $10 or $20, they have a souvenir for life. So it's not like I feel like I'm selling crap, but it's just the cause. It's just so beautiful. And everyone who buys it is in good spirits, and everyone's friendly, and everyone's trying to help each other, and no one's trying to, say, can I have it for $1 less? No, it's for charity. Just buy the damn thing.
Yeah. So, my partner, Matt, wanted to go, was very excited about going. So we went, and I felt like every now and then I was sort of nudging him to like, you don't need that. Don't buy that. But at the same time, I understand the excitement, the energy, especially if you don't frequent New York City, to take a piece of New York home, take a piece of these shows home is is a great thing. And just being out there, it was from one, I was just surprised. It's like, where are all the people when we're trying to fill seats? And now everybody is crowded around Schubert Alley. And so I was like, I'm just glad. I'm glad to see everybody out here. Like, we came all the way from Philly, so I imagine where everybody else was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But it was nice to walk around and see, swag from yesteryear.
Also, just we should mention, every hour, a group of 10 celebrities or theater celebrities come out and sign autographs. And the next hour, they switch to a different 10. So Bernadette Peters comes out. The other part, and I have to mention this only because he deserves it. You don't work on the flea market in one day. The company manager of Hamilton, you know how hard he works? The man it's nonstop. That show makes a fortune, but it takes...
Man, it's nonstop.
Brig Bernie has to be named. He created the APAM table year-round. In order to sell $95,000, you have to have a lot of merchandise. He collects it, he prices it, he organizes it, he gets all the volunteers together, he runs the table, he does that while running Hamilton. The man is like, I just bow to him. And we're bowing to each other in theater. We are working so hard, and yet now, why are we not supported? Why? I'm using the word artist. Yeah, there are some people, if you wanted to say, hey, he's a tap dancer. Okay. But there are artists who are tap dancers. You can get that far. There's no support. Buying a ticket to a show is not saying, oh, guess what? You're going to have health care all year round.
Yeah.
Or that you are actually going to be employed when your show closes. And You and I have both been reading articles lately about the great line is artists are not supported. Theaters only employ them.
Yeah.
And then they get kicked out. Our society doesn't support them. And we're not talking about movie stars. I mean, they make $20 million a film. They can afford to be unemployed for 3 months or whatever. Most actors and dancers and managers and pressing, they don't get to do that. Right?
Yeah. So, that is an interesting thought. And I do think about that a lot. Especially in the summer, when we did the readings, the simplest thing to do was take care of our team.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took care of our team. We made sure, the Theater Exile is in a great location in South Philadelphia, but in terms of taking a break, it's not easy to get to where the food is. And, depending on certain times of day, all those things might be closed. So those are all the things that we think about. I know everybody's coming from different places. And so when they get in this space, I want them to feel comfortable. So we always provided, refreshments and snacks and stuff. And it was always replenished. And it was so appreciated by our team. And I'm so happy that they appreciated that. But I'm also happy that is just the standard for me.
For you. And that's with all honesty, that's a large reason why we're friends, because that I mean, not particularly that you provide snacks, but is that's part of who you are, right? That
to take care of them,
right? Well, and everything the farm has done. We're constantly trying to make $1 spread to $2 worth of stuff, but not on the backs of the people who are helping us. And so even when we close a reading, we always take them and their parents and their friends out to eat, because it may have been one reading, but we kind of celebrate their performance, their work. And sometimes that costs money. So, per person, it's not a lot of money. And they're getting what I call chump change, but they're getting money. But it's so appreciated because you get to put a button on the work that you did. There's a period, it ended. Along the way, as you said, Darnell, certainly a theater exile, the fact that people would come out of rehearsal and say, I have a break for 10 minutes, and there were snacks for them. They didn't have to say,
replenish.
Right. What do I do now? Because I can't run to a local store. It's too far away, and make it back. And that meant, hey, they know I'm giving them something of worth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that's very important. I will say, I got in I don't want to call it a tiff. There's a Broadway producer who won't talk to me. I was, this was at Broadway Con, which is like Comic-Con. There's a Broadway Con here in New York every year. And it was I think it was the first year it existed. And I was a moderator on a panel of producers. So with one of the discussions, someone in the audience said, hey, I live in Ohio and I've got to play. How do I get actors to do it? How do I do this? And this particular producer said, oh, please, your friends will do it for free. Just tell them there. It's in the living room and you just ask them for free. You don't have to give them anything. It shouldn't cost you anything. And I interrupted and I said, that's not right. I said, the least you can do is $25 and say, bring lunch, or you can have lunch for them. You have to let people know they're worth something. That's part of what we do in the industry. And then the other producers all agreed with me. So now we embarrassed that one producer, and he won't talk to me. His staff will talk to me. It's like, this is now 10 years later. It's still,
and And I also understand why he said that too.
Yeah, I do too. I know it.
Because that is how we get started. But yes, the thing is, like, now we're kind of like resigned. Excuse me there.
Mhm.
We're resigned to the fact that, like, oh no, we can just rope people in and come in and read the script. But technically you can, like, if you have a script and you just finished a draft, you can reach out to your friends and ask them.
Absolutely.
But you should thank them for their time, whether it's like, here's $25 or I made a pasta dinner. When you feed people, it goes a long way, especially if you include
or
some
just
alcohol.
even having some coffee and cookies while they're reading it for you personally.
Yeah.
If this is a very private thing, you just don't expect free things. That's what makes our industry special, because I'm sure if Apple could get, I shouldn't use Apple, should I? We're using Campbell's
Technology
soup.
company?
Campbell's soup.
Yes, we are.
Poor Campbell's soup. We like Campbell's soup. But if Campbell's
Whoever owns them now.
right, if Campbell's Soups decides to have a conference, and they want speakers, they may give a bottle of water and that's it. You never know, right? But that's not the way our industry works.
Yeah, absolutely. And so back to the main topic that companies aren't supporting the actor.
All right.
The thing is, like, we have to be honest. The reason we're recruiting them, the reason we are paying them, the reason we have them on contracts, they're temporary, is because they're helping us reach our goals, not their goals. These are so we're pulling them in, and we have to remind them every day that we appreciate that. And it's not that people don't say thank you. It's not that people don't show that they're grateful. It's not that they don't get opening night gifts, and we take care of them. We do take care of them, but we kind of lose sight of, we're not in business to support them. They are contractors that we hire. And, I think we look for the organizations that think beyond that.
Well, what about I don't know that there aren't companies like this now, but certainly when I was younger, there were a lot more repertory companies in which they were artist-centric. And I'm going to start with, I mentioned to you about my first summer stock company, that we were being killed and treated like dirt. But it was created by a bunch of students in Ithaca College who had just graduated. And they chose all of their shows for the summer based around what they would be appropriate to be in or to direct. So they gave themselves a summer worth of employment. There was Circle Repertory here in New York. They also at one point was a repertory group of actors who would direct, act, and produce themselves. Doesn't mean you don't hire an administrator to help or a musical director. The biggest one and the most famous one is in Chicago. Gary Sinise, Terry Kinney. Oh God, I'm going to forget her name from, I guess most famous for the Roseanne show, playing her sister.
Laurie Metcalf.
Laurie Metcalf.
Metcalf.
There are so many TV shows you're going to see these actors who started at in Chicago's Steppenwolf Company, which was a group of actors who said, we are here to find work for ourselves. And their theater company paid them. And the idea is, in a repertory company, you have a yearly salary. Now, you're allowed to go out. If you get a TV show or something else, you can go. And they do hire individuals to fill in those parts they don't have. But the choice of material is based on the actors who are part of the company. forms
Yeah.
the people. That seems to me a more supportive way, but that takes some real administrative skill of who's going to organize that and get it going. My thing about support, and I don't know that this is possible, but having a national theater, having theaters that say the artist may be unemployed, but we're going to hire them for more than one show. Again, that is a summer stock concept. We hire a lot of young kids. You're going to help with the lights and the sets, but you're also going to be in the ensemble of every show we do over the summer. If we, as a society, came up with a plan to say we're going to extend that and now make it year-round, and then you just go from company to company or however that works, that might be a little more supportive. I don't know if our listeners know that you cannot get year-round health insurance through Actors Equity unless you've been working in every quarter of the year, that you get your health insurance based on the work you did in the previous quarter.
Sure.
So if you have a bad quarter, you're out of health insurance. That's really tricky when you're trying to have a consistent doctor. Now, bless our industry, the Actors Fund, now the Entertainment Community Fund, has free health clinics with the same doctors that you would get under a health plan, but they work absolutely for free. And all you do if you work in the entertainment industry is you walk in the front door. They won't give you surgery, but they will not turn you away, and they will do everything a regular doctor would do, free of charge. And that's paid for by some of the money we made at the Broadway flea market. Some of that money goes to pay for the clinic. And there are many other things that money goes for: cancer, AIDS, research, on and on and on. It gets split up. It also goes, by the way, for disaster relief. So that although there's a committee that votes on it, in the case of Hurricane Helene that just happened this week, I am absolutely sure they are going to vote some funds to help supplement what FEMA does or what the Red Cross does. They will say, here's some money. It's an amazing community. We don't have to all individually send money. We know the money we've raised is going to go help. So it's a great thing. I know I'm all over the place with this comment, but the support, there has to be a way to say, I'm 26 years old, I'm out of college, I plan to be an actor or a musician or a set designer or a lighting designer, and I am willing to work for readings and showcases and things that don't pay me a lot of money to further my thing, but I cannot afford to do that if I need a full-time day job.
Yeah.
How do we supplement them for X amount of time? There's no easy answer for this, but we haven't explored ways to do it. And that's how you support people, I think.
I think it's also societal. It's like we don't, everybody doesn't value the arts like we do.
That's correct.
And so, like Philadelphia is a city where the sports come first. It doesn't mean that our performing arts are not valuable. Like we really value our art scene, but the air gets sucked out when the sports teams are doing well. It's just because they reach everyone. Like you just live in the city and you have a shirt or a hat for a team in your city because it's your city.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have a theater t-shirt because you live next to the theater or you live in the neighborhood that the theater is in. That's not always the case. And everything we do is so isolated. It's so inside of our organization that the only way for you to take part is to, you have to go to our organization. It's kind of interesting how...
I'm sorry, I was just saying, you brought up a great point. And I think with that theaters, especially nonprofits, have not tried to court their communities. And I don't see, as much as you and I are talking about it, and certainly we're going to speak to Alan Harrison again, and he talks about it. And there are other theater people who it's on the tip of their lips. Most of our nonprofits don't even give it lip service. They are in it as if they're commercial theater. We are here to make enough money to do what the artistic director wants to do next.
Yeah.
And that's not involving or even inviting the community, because then it becomes, well, if I live next door to you, but I don't like the next show you're doing, I'm not going to be there. As opposed to, I support you because you do great work and I like having a theater in my community. That's the ideal. But again, part of that is a personality thing. I've discovered from talking to a lot of investors, especially for Broadway shows and off-Broadway commercial shows, they give money because they know the person who's raising the money. And they like them and they trust them. So if the artistic director, managing director, the staff isn't out there being personal with their community, I'm not sure people want to give the same amount of money. It's a question. If I had the answer, I would just say, do this. But I wonder if that's it. If it really comes down to, we need to court these people and say, we're not here. You're not here just for us. We're also here for you. And why don't we go out to dinner together and chat and just get to know each other? I don't, we're so involved in how much work it is to put on our shows, and it's a lot of work.
I mean, I do think about it. If you're not a theater person, I always talked about how here in Philadelphia, the Walnut Street Theater, the way it's set up, its lobby, you walk into the main entrance. If you go to the left, that's the entrance to the theater. If you keep going straight, there's a glass door that leads to the offices, but there's a reception, reception right there. When they see you coming, they have sort of a sense that you're supposed to be here. So they buzz you in. And there's sort of it's just kind of a cadence. It's the way you carry. Like if you're just walking through like you own the place, I mean, kind of. Or you walk in like you're very comfortable here. They just sort of buzz you in, or else you just have to knock. But the thing is, like, if you don't know that, you would walk in and immediately feel lost or feel like this isn't a place where you're welcome, or you wouldn't even walk in at all. Like, do we even know which box offices are open to talk to a physical person? Because everything we've done is online now. Like, our website is designed for you to buy your ticket without calling us.
And have no contact with a human being. And theater is live. That's its entire point. Yeah, but if you can do it that way easier, you push a button, you get your tickets.
Absolutely. And, because the thing is, our thought is we're trying to take the complication out of buying tickets. Yeah. So we've simplified it so you don't need to call us. But that doesn't mean we don't want to talk to you. That doesn't mean we don't want to meet with you.
Now, let's be honest. If everyone called you, you would be annoyed if everyone called you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, but just to validate what they've already done. Yes, maybe. But I'm saying, like, it doesn't mean we don't want to know who's buying our tickets. It doesn't mean, like, if you came to the theater and asked to speak to somebody, that we wouldn't find you and talk to you. It's just interesting because, like, the way you enter a theater is you decide on your own to go to the website, buy a ticket, if not from a discount site like Today Tix or TDF or something. And then you walk into the theater and you're immediately met by people who temporarily work for the organization.
Mhm.
You know, like the front of house staff may not be full time. They may be knowledgeable, but they're not. They can't tell you. They can't sell you on the organization per se. It's the hope that they can, but if they're not fully committed, as in full time employees, you can't really expect that from them.
That's
you know,
correct.
and so, but they're the first people who meet your patrons, and so if the people who meet your patrons can't really give a whole lot of information, and that's your first impression, and that's that. So you want to make sure that your front of house is knowledgeable, and you
No,
want to
so
try to include them in everything you can.
right, and you want them certainly. That's why ushers on Broadway are so important, because they really are the only direct contact that most 99% of the audience will have with anyone working on that show. And you're talking about curmudgeons, some of them. People have been saying, oh, another one who's half drunk. Oh, and their minds are going, the seat's over there. Just go over there. I have 14 people here asking me questions. But there are others who are just delightful.
Yeah.
And so you don't know, and none of them represent the show per se, right? But as you mentioned, one of the great moments, one of the great feelings I have about Broadway, having worked there, is, at least up until recent days, I could walk up to a stage door and walk in. There was at least someone there who knew I was. I may have nothing to do with the show, but they know I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to hurt anybody. I know my way around. I know where the wardrobe room is. He must have a purpose. Now, that stopped with the pandemic. We understand.
Yeah.
But what a great feeling, because, hey, I did a show in this theater. I know everyone who works here. So they're old friends. So they're not going to question. And you feel like you've come home. So that should be at every theater, I think. And the more you tell my family when they go to the theater that they didn't just see the show there, they actually felt like there was a place to come visit the next time they come to town without me. That's what the goal should be. But you and I both know.
And I do understand those restrictions for Broadway. But, a regional theater is here for the community. And so it should be accessible.
I agree.
To the community. And I'm not saying that companies are not. I'm just saying, like, that's something to remind yourself of all the time. It's like, we think about it all the time. It's like, okay, so we're open at, we advertise that we're open at a certain time for, if somebody wants to call in. But then we don't get any calls. We may not get any calls in that first hour. And then we start to question, do we need to be here this early? Do we need to be on the phone this early?
Right.
But, you have to make clear that your building is open. And in most cases, it's not. It's not open until maybe like an hour before the show. Because if nobody's out there, they can't receive anybody, And so, it can't be signature. You see, I think, but a lot of this is like, you can't have a place unattended. You have to pay somebody to be there. And if you can't pay somebody to be there, then you are cutting yourself off from the community, because you can't open your doors if no one's there to, there to welcome people in. And so it doesn't feel like a place that's inviting.
It's the vicious circle, though. You need money in order to invite people in. And then inviting them in might get you some more money, which is why which is, to me, the most interesting and relevant reason to have a new normal. Doing things exactly the way we did them before the pandemic isn't working. It doesn't mean you can't get by. We all know how to survive, right? That's why we're still here. But somewhere we got to figure this out. Just doing it the way we did it isn't satisfying. No.
No.
And I don't want to bring up specific theaters, but I'm thinking of them.
Yes.
I'm sure. But so we should tell everyone about Alan coming on the 14th.
Yes.
Or after the 14th.
But I want to say I wasn't mentioning Signature to criticize Signature. I was mentioning Signature Theater in New York City because their lobby is open to the public, and it's a great opportunity. Like, you can go in and sit there. You connect to the Wi-Fi. They've got a cafe that's open most of the time, but you're in the space, and the fact that you're welcomed into space, why wouldn't you inquire about what else happens in this space? You may just be sitting there for the moment, but why wouldn't you want to know what is going on in this space? They have multiple theater venues in the space. And so if you are comfortable enough to come in and sit with your laptop for an hour or so, or get something from the cafe, why wouldn't you patronize the organization by seeing what their building is in business for?
But, and again, not as a criticism, but as someone who does frequent the lobby of Signature Theater, the people, they don't represent Signature, but the people who are the kindest, the most available, and are the security guards, the custodians, and the venue officers. There's like the support staff. They're working. The people in the administrative offices never come out. You never see them except as they're walking through to go to some rehearsal.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not being fair to them, but being I'm there pretty often, I know who they are. Right? I even see playwrights of the shows more often than I see the administration of Signature. And it makes me sad. Although, what a great staff they have. I'm saying if these people should be in charge of the theater because they represent. I see them on the street and they give you a big hug, and you've met their families. I mean, come on, shouldn't we be doing? Everybody that comes to your theater should know who your husband or wife is, or who your children are, or where you live, what you've done. Everyone should feel like your family. And there isn't a theater company in New York that I'm aware of that makes even professionals feel like their family. And that's a sad story.
But in general, like, we know everybody's busy because we're trying to figure out how to get the last 40 seats sold, but if you're too busy to make time for the public you claim to serve, then you have to ask yourself, are you doing the right things?
I think as a closer, to back up what you just said, Carol Burnett, here we go. The best choice I can think of. When I was a child, I had the joy of seeing Carol Burnett in Once Upon a Mattress, in the show that made her a star. And bless my parents, we got backstage. So here I am talking to Carol Burnett, and there were a couple other people backstage. And my mother asked her and said, "Why do you do this? You work so hard putting the show on. How come you said yes to a stranger like us and let us come backstage and you signed autographs?" And she said, "That's part of the job." She said, "It's not just putting on the show. I want to be an actress. I want to be famous. I want to be known. I want to get more work. The audience and my fans are just as important as the show I'm working on." And it's like the fact that this wasn't a burden to her. And I don't know how to I've taken this with me everywhere I go. I always talk to everyone I can at every theater I can, including the Broadway shows. I come out, I talk to people in the audience, and I'm the manager. Nobody cares who I am. Right? That stuck with me. Luckily, and I was 12 years old. I know exactly when it was. From 12 years old, she has affected me. And I wish we could teach this to every nonprofit this is who we need you to be. So bless Carol Burnett. Is that a way to end our podcast?
Yes. Yes. Bless Carol Burnett. There's a link in the show notes of what happened when Carol Burnett fell asleep on stage in Once Upon a Mattress.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of good stories. There are a lot of good stories.
Yeah, so be sure to check that out. But that's The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we will see you at the theater.
Yay.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.